Hey there. Today we're going to talk about a huge question, maybe one of the biggest. How do we choose? Well, it turns out that a surprisingly powerful formula for our decisions was discovered decades ago by watching pigeons. Seriously, let's get into it.
I mean, just think about your day. You're constantly making choices, right? What to eat, what show to binge watch, which email to answer first. We tend to think our decisions are these super complex personal things, a product of our own free will. But what if there's a simple, predictable rule hidden underneath it all?
Yep, you heard that right. Back in 1963, a scientist named George Reynolds ran this incredibly elegant experiment with a few ordinary pigeons. And what he found was so precise, so predictable, it was like he'd uncovered a kind of hidden math behind the act of choosing itself.
So to really understand this discovery, you got to understand the experiment. We need to peek inside the setup, which I like to call the pigeon box.
Okay, so here it is. This is the experimental chamber. And it's actually pretty simple. You've got a pigeon, and it's facing a wall with 3 little round keys that can light up. For the time it's in there, this is the pigeon's entire world, and it all comes down to the choices it makes right here.
So what's the pigeon's job? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It sees 3 red keys, and it can peck any one it wants. But, and this is the important part, each key is set up to give a food reward on a different schedule. So maybe one key pays out a lot, another one pays out sometimes, and a third one barely pays out at all. The pigeon's goal? Super simple. Figure out how to get the most food.
The setup is simple, but the question is, well, it's huge. When you give these pigeons different odds, what do they actually do? Is their behavior just going to be random, or is a pattern going to emerge from all those pecks? Let's take a look at the data.
Reynolds was tracking everything. Every single peck, on every key for every pigeon. He was hunting for a connection, a clear relationship between the food being offered and the choices being made.
Now check this out. When you first look at the raw data, just the total number of pecks versus the total number of rewards, it looks like a mess. The lines are all over the place. You can kind of see a trend, but it's really hard to find a simple, elegant rule in all that noise. It just looks complicated.
But then Reynolds had this brilliant insight. He decided to stop looking at the raw numbers. Instead, he asked a totally different question. What percentage of the pigeon's pecks went to a certain key compared to the percentage of rewards that same key provided? It seems like a small change in perspective, but it changed absolutely everything.
And this is what he found. Just look at that. When you plot the percentage of pecks against the percentage of rewards, all that messy, chaotic data just snaps into place. It becomes a nearly perfect straight line. Honestly, it's one of the most beautiful findings in all of behavioral science.
So let me break that down, because this is the whole thing right here. The relationship was an almost perfect one-to-one match. If one key was giving out, say, 75% of all the food, the pigeon spent 75% of their pecks on that key. If another key only offered 10% of the rewards, you guessed it, it only got 10% of the pecks. They didn't just pick the best key, they divided up their effort in exact proportion to the payoff. Now, this incredibly consistent and predictable behavior wasn't just a coincidence. It was the discovery of a truly fundamental principle of behavior. And pretty soon, it was given a name.
It's called the matching law, and it means exactly what it sounds like. Living things, from pigeons to people, tend to match their choices to the rate of reward they get from those choices. It's a simple but incredibly powerful formula for predicting behavior.
And here it is, straight from Reynolds' original paper. The word to focus on here is invariance. He's saying this wasn't just something that happens sometimes. It was a stable, unchanging equality. It was a law.
So how precise was this matching? Get this. In his paper, Reynolds calculated how much the pigeon's behavior deviated, on average, from a perfect one-to-one match. The number was just 0.014. That is an incredibly small number. It's an astonishing level of precision. The pigeons weren't just guessing. They were acting like tiny, feathered accountants, perfectly balancing their behavioral budget.
Okay, so pigeons are surprisingly good at statistics. That's a pretty cool fun fact. But why does a 60-year-old experiment with birds still matter so much to us today?
Well, the matching law tells us something really profound. It shows that our behavior isn't nearly as random as we think. It's actually lawful and predictable. It suggests that our choices are powerfully and often unconsciously shaped by the rewards we get. We are all constantly building a mental map of our world, figuring out where the payoffs are, and then we distribute our time and energy to match.
And this goes so far beyond pigeons in a box. The matching law is now a cornerstone of behavioral science. It helps explain everything from how we carry on a conversation to how we browse the internet or which products we end up buying. It's just a fundamental rule of how we interact with our world.
And that leaves us with one last, kind of fascinating question to chew on. If a simple formula can predict a pigeon's pecks with that much accuracy, how much of your own life, the websites you visit, the people you talk to, the projects you spend time on, is being guided by that same invisible law of matching? Just how predictable are you?